Alright guys, just got this thing welded up. So want to be careful where I grab it. It's definitely hot. Ooh, warm. I ended up changing my idea. Ended up wanting the bar to go in between them instead of underneath. So I still have plenty of flexibility, so I can drop it down lower. So it doesn't matter. That's why I made everything. I made it 11 inches tall. Gives me adjustability and flexibility where I want to move it back and forth. So that's done. Next thing I'll do is go ahead and clean these welds up and get it back clamped up, get it set, and I'll go ahead and drill the holes to mount it to the frame. So I'm guessing that's going to be the next step. So I guess let's do that and get ready to go ahead and kind of finish mocking everything up, getting this motor plate done. Well, alright guys, this is what I was wanting to show. Since I left off from the last clip, what I've done is went ahead and removed the entire the tires off this thing. Got the whole entire thing put up on stands. Now it's time for the part that I've been waiting for, and that's to start throwing in my idea of how to make this thing go faster, keep a good amount of torque, and make it work a little bit more efficient on this conversion. And this the way I'm going to do this is definitely it's a one of a kind. I have not seen another YouTube video on doing this. I've seen the other method that I did, seen a couple after I did mine, seen that other people had the same idea, but it's time to definitely go on and do something a little different, to be a little bit more creative. I'm kind of glad I went ahead and put this thing up on stands and took these wheels off. I've always had an issue on this side. See if I can get you kind of in there. You kind of notice this stud, how it's nice and fat right here, then it slims real low. And we got the same issue on that one. This one down here is starting to do it. This one is starting to do it. And what it is, let me see if I can show you. There was an issue right here with this rim. If you notice, some holes are real wallered out. Somehow or another, we were playing on it, not really paying attention, and the rim had come loose. And in the process, being a loose rim, just completely tore up them studs. But I think there was also something else. So just that way I can address this issue while I'm going about it. Can't remember if I showed this in the last clip because it's been several weeks since I've been working just filming. I went ahead and set the motor down on that plate. Worst case scenario, if I have to trim just a hair, you see that black mark right next to the motor. If I need to give it just a hair of spacing just to have a little, give myself, I don't know, about an eighth, somewhere around an eighth of clearance right there on this side. And the other side, if this motor is lined up perfectly, I have already the spacing on the other side of that clutch mechanism. So I guess the fun part now is to remove all the nuts and bolts, everything that hold this whole unit in place. And what I'm going to have to do first is come in and remove my tensioner. I got to pull the bolt and the washer from underneath. That'll be the first step. The second step, see if I can get y'all down here. I got to pull this cotter pin that releases the brakes. And the way this works is two cables go to a central tensioner that go to the pedal. When you pull on the brakes, push on the brake pedal, it pulls this forward, locking the brakes. So I'll have to undo the bottom nut for the tensioner, undo this pin, set it aside. I think after that will be to loosen, take this this little clamp off that clamps the axle assembly to the leaf spring. So there's two nuts there, and come back here and undo the leaf spring itself, drop it, flip it around, then reassemble everything right back up. Then comes up to the next phase, which is going to be to swap all the brake components, which is really just the drum, backing plate. Everything needs to come off from the left side and go to the right, and vice versa. And I'll explain that as I go along. I'm not going to show the boring details of that because it's just literally removing nuts and bolts and just doing the whole swap around. So for my idea to work, I guess I better get to work. Alright guys, I just wanted to show this clip. I got the axle completely taken apart, or not took it apart, but took all of its mounting points down, released it, got it down, and my intention was try to make this easy as possible, to kind of just maneuver it around, get it out, flip it around, and so that way I didn't have to undo a leaf spring. I almost had it that way. I only had to undo the passenger side. The jack stand itself is what hindered me. If I would have actually put it like up here, I would have been able to cantilever the rear end a little higher, and that would have enabled me to do it without flipping anything around. So right now, since I've got the leaf spring loose, I'm going to slide it out to this side, flip it around, and go right back in, remount the leaf spring, and start reassembling everything right back to its order the way it was before I had to disassemble it. Alright, I've got the axle back sitting on its perches, got the leaf spring mounted back up. Haven't bolted nothing else up, but because this will only take literally like minutes to really assemble. And this is what I was wanting to show, is by flipping the axle around. This is an electric cart axle now. It doesn't have forward and reverse, and being so, whenever you push the cart forward, this assembly right here, this little spline will spin forward. If you push the cart backwards, it will spin relatively backwards. So the reason why I flipped this whole axle around is it's going to give you all this open space. In order to put the motor correctly, you're going to have the chain on the driver's side, so when the motor's spinning properly, it's going to spin forward. So now I can continue. Once I bolt all this up, now it's fabrication time. I can go ahead and fabricate the, I guess you'd call it a jack shaft of sorts, and I'll show all that as I get to it. But this is what the main point of me showing this clip was. I wanted everybody to see, go ahead and flip the axle around. It's not going to hurt nothing. It's all going to spin relatively the same because there is not a reverse gear. That's the only bad part about converting a cart. But I only picked this whole entire rolling chassis up with wheels, brakes, everything besides the throttle pedal for 150 bucks. I got it off eBay, and it took me a couple hours driving way south of my location to go pick it up. But it was still a good deal just to have another toy around. So I guess let me go ahead and bolt all this components back up just like the way it was before I flipped the axle around. And it'll be time to go ahead and fabricate this piece up, so we can go ahead and start mounting gear and everything else. Well, alright, you kind of see the whole thing. It's basically bolted back in place. There's a couple things I think I'm going to go ahead and fix before I even start with the jack shaft assembly. One of them is going to be this right here. If you notice, I have this one piece. It was cut out on the original design, trying to make room, try to get to that shaft. Before I really started contemplating and rethinking this whole thing, I cut this piece out, which is part of the original motor support. But that's not really the issue. The issue is going to be right here, and I'm not afraid to show my mistakes. I had cut down too low, and not anticipating there'll be like a oil galley or whatever. This is going to be a little cavity, and this is the other half of it. You notice they had this would have went right here. And I wasn't sure how any of this was actually assembled or how it worked when I first began this project years ago. But by cutting that, I've actually exposed where contaminants can get down into the gearbox. So the way I'm going to remedy this is I must have marked this years ago, and I should have cut on that line. I'll cut this piece out, and I'll just turn around, clean this aluminum up, and use some like JB Weld or something, and just basically glue that little piece. Well, whenever you're doing something on camera, there we go. It's good enough. But what I'll do is I'll just glue it back, basically back in place to seal this, seal all this back up. That's just really one of the things I need to fix. And let's see if I can get y'all in for a closer shot if I don't make y'all dizzy. And if you notice this little tab right in there, that is what activates the brakes. And technically the way it's supposed to be is that is supposed to be facing coming backwards, and that little pull cable will pull it forward and to activate the brakes. Now I'm not sure how any of this is set up because I've never really dug into one of these brakes. That's going to be the next thing from what I've deciphered. Thinking about it, it'd be easier just take the backing plate and brake assembly from one side, swap it with the other. It's 4 bolts that hold it all in place, and you can see the 4 bolts right there. So what I'm going to do is go ahead and pop the drums off, double check my shoes, everything. I know I need studs now on this side. That's the side that was on the driver's side, now it's on the passenger. It has the messed up studs, so I got to pull the hubs anyway to do all this. So I need to go ahead and look into stopping by a golf cart shop, picking up some studs. But for right now, I guess it's time to disassemble the brakes and swap them side to side. And when I go out later on today, I guess pick up some JB Weld. Go ahead and fix this problem once and for all. And I need to double check, but I believe it's 30 weight motor oil goes inside these, so I'm gonna double check that. Go ahead and pick up what I need for this. Might as well, while I'm doing all this, go ahead and flush it and refill it. This cart, I believe, is a 97, so it's definitely about time to get some fluid changes. Hey guys, just had a couple minutes. I took this piece, it was real heavy, rusted. I just threw it in the sandblast cabinet. Just knock off a lot of it. It's not exactly the smoothest surfaces, but it will work for what I'm about to do. We're going to build that shaft that comes off. It'll have an input, or it connects to the input of the original rear axle, and it's going to basically come off of that with a little coupler straight through to this piece. I'll have a pillow block bearing right here. Well, to build this, I have, as you can see, a nice, very thick piece of metal. Found it in the junk pile, so that works. What I did was I took one of these clamps that goes, there's 8 of them that will clamp down a front end of a stock beetle beam to a sandrail. I happen to have a couple of these, so I keep them around for fabrication. Basically what I'm going to do is take this unit once it's built, and it'll clamp around the axle to keep it simple. So what I did is, as you see already, I have a little black line. So what I did is I took that piece, sat it right here, squared up, and what I'm going to do is just cut this out so the inside of this is all going to be basically as one. And what that allows me to do is come in through the top and put a nice thick heavy weld to make all this as one unit. Then I can kind of proceed on to the next step. Well, alright guys, what I've done is hopefully I've gotten y'all at least a good enough angle to see what I'm doing. Basically what I've done is took this heavy duty clamp bench vise, clamped it, the work piece in there. What I'm going to do is just use the good old Sawzall, just try to trim it, get it close enough, then I'll take the ankle grinder with a flap wheel and get it down right to where I need it. It's the only thing I have right now. I haven't purchased a plasma cutter I would like. Even if I ordered it right now, it's going to take me a month to get it shipped here, so it's the best I can do. So I guess why don't I go ahead and get this thing, start cutting it, and we'll just put that part in high speed. Alright guys, you kind of see the basic idea. It'll be kind of flat here, go up, come around, and go back to flat. And this should clamp around. And I know, before somebody even comments, yes, there's a little jaggedness of the edge. I didn't get it dead on, but what is an advantage is what I'm going to do is just come around, weld the front side, get a nice thick bead in, then I'll flip it around, and because I did go a little extra back, I could put a little bit of a small bead on the back side to stabilize it. So I guess let me just go ahead and get it welded up, and we'd be good to start something else. Well, alright guys, I hope the video came out of making that the little end piece for my little rig up. I'm not sure the camera cut off, and a lot of times it'll either save the footage or it gets corrupted, so I'm hoping that came through. Well, what I'm working on here, this is the motor coupler that would have originally been pressed onto a shaft inside the motor, and it couples to the little input shaft right here, and it just has so much splines and it just slips right on. So what I did was, the guy who I bought this golf cart body is some kind of guy that fixes them, had a bunch of extra parts. So when I bought the body off of him, he had a custom front end. I didn't argue with the price, it was just too good, so I went ahead and got it. Got talking to him and he gave me a junk motor, so I was able not to press this off, but what I did was kind of get my Sawzall blade in there and just cut it. Then once I had it cut, I didn't dig into the coupler, I put it in the vise and just cut part of it and grounded the rest with a flap wheel till I got it nice and smooth. This is it's a hub something, I'm trying to remember the exact name. I get these at Tractor Supply, and what it is, it's got a hole in the center with a keyway, and it's got set screws. And what it's made for is that you slide a different kind of gear, kind of like as you've seen earlier how I did the custom gear for the motor. Same basic concept. I want to say this is 3/4 inch inside diameter. Excuse me guys, and that should work for what I'm going to do. So what I'm doing now is I'm going to go ahead and weld this up. I've taken my digital calipers and I've measured from this right here on this inside piece to this lip, and I tried to get it down to the what is it, 10,000ths of an inch. Want to make sure this is dead square. It's been clamped up probably going on a month. I did this about a month ago. This video is for me is dragging out because I can only work on this when I can get to it. But what I want to do is go ahead and permanently weld this together. So if I make any mistake now, it's going to cost me later, but I've just double checked everything, so hopefully I have it perfectly balanced. So let's go ahead and go ahead and start getting this welded up so we can proceed on.